Hey guys, I'm Haderaxe, and today I'm going to be showing you a Frost-Shiver build. I'm personally a big fan of both the Brr-Zerker and the Stabbomancer, so I decided to throw a little something together, and we will talk about it more after the obligatory parasite kill. Alright, so let's get into the build then, shall we? We're going to be rocking the From the Shadows action skill. Pretty strong skill, 100% crit rate when it's active is pretty strong, and it's going to pair really well with the Rage of the Ancients passive. Whenever we pop an action skill, we're going to be dealing bonus frost damage for a duration. So, Stabbomancer tree left to right, we're going to be rocking Arsenal for the gun damage. The rest is nice, but not really essential. Then we're going to rock Haste, which is mainly being picked for the movement speed. The melee attack speed is not essential. Then we're going to do Potent Poisons. This skill is good, but I wouldn't really recommend maxing it out. So basically it's going to increase our dot damage and dot duration. And we mainly got it to open up this fourth tier of skills. So that's why you only slotted 2 points in. But moving on, we have Follow-Up. We didn't actually slot a point there, it just came from our equipment. But the important one is Swift Death. So the faster you move, the more damage you deal. This pairs very well with Haste and Cold Snap. We'll talk more about Cold Snap later. It's the same as Haste, but for Brr-Zerker. But these two perks will increase our movement speed, and honestly, this is pretty strong. 14% increased damage at default walk speed is strong enough, in my opinion. You don't need to sprint and jump. You can just kind of casually walk and jump around the target circling. Then we have Exploit Their Weakness. This is strong. It applies a debuff to the enemy whenever you put a status effect. So obviously max that out. 6% increased damage is nice. Then we have Sneak Attack. This increases our critical hit damage. That's a no-brainer. Then we have Contagion. So every time we apply a status effect to an enemy, it can spread to nearby enemies. And if there's no nearby enemies around, it'll just add another status effect. So you can shoot them with a frost weapon, and then the entire room just becomes affected by frost damage over time, or slows. This is also nice because if there are no other enemies in the room, you can just keep shooting the one enemy that is in the room. And on top of the frost status effect that you're applying to them, you can also get things like fire damage over time, and poison damage over time, and electricity damage over time. So this skill I think is pretty strong, especially paired with the Potent Poison skill that we have in the first tree. Just increasing that dot damage and being able to spread all these effects to an entire room causes some pretty chaotic combat situations, and I think it's pretty strong. Then moving on to 1000 Cuts, this skill is also a no-brainer. Critical hits grant increased damage dealt for time being. Yeah, we're going to slot 5 points into that. And then the Executioner's Blade. This is just a capstone. Might as well grab it. It's really cheap. It does a lot. It's not really integral to the build, but it is a strong perk on its own, so we're going to snatch that up for the really cheap price. I would normally like the Brr-Zerker one, but since we can't really get that because of the skills we have in the Stabbomancer tree, we're just going to go ahead and send it, get the Executioner Blade for real cheap. And moving on to the Brr-Zerker tree, we have Ancestral Frost. This just increases frost damage, no-brainer. Then we have Icebreaker. This is really nice for mobbing, so anytime you slow or freeze an enemy, you're going to deal more damage to them. You can't really do that to bosses, but this will, be very useful for badass enemies and such. Then we have the Old Ways. This is the strongest perk we can get for the Brr-Zerker. It complements our Stabbomancer tree really well, and we're going to use Cursed Wit. So basically, whenever you're very close to an enemy, and you're always going to be close to an enemy if you were mimicking like what I did during the parasite fight, just kind of circling the enemy and walking around, that is going to be a very strong skill. Just 30% increased damage, very strong. Then you have Cold Snap. We mainly got this for the movement speed. This is where our last skill point was allocated. The frost efficiency is nice, but the movement speed and then the double movement speed on Enrage, it's really nice. Pairs with Haste very well for Swift Death. Now let's move on to the inventory. My build at this current point in time does not benefit from optimal rings and necklaces. The class mod is the right type of class mod. You do want an amalgam. Amalgams provide a lot of stat bonuses, so find one that fits your stat needs, and preferably fits, the Brr-Zerker and Stabbomancer power increases. This one is not optimal either because it does not include a Brr-Zerker bonus, which is the bonus that we're prioritizing for this build. But if you can get your hands on one that you are satisfied with, it will help your build. My Buffmeister could also be better. It could be Frost. It could be, chaotic and volatile to get that increased damage, but it's not. So if you find better versions of these, your build will be better than my current one is. The real important part though is the Cursed Wit, and even that isn't chaotic or volatile, but it deals 100% increased damage when the ward is depleted to nearby enemies. So this stacks very well with the Old Ways skill in the Berserker tree. If you are going to hover around the enemies like I do, then the Cursed Wit paired with this skill is going to be very strong, and it complements the build more than the weapons do, in my opinion. We are using a liquid cooling, and I know people don't like it if they don't like meta, but it is meta right now, so I am running it. You can replace this with a ×4 Frost Nightshade, and you will still shred. Not as good as a liquid cooling, but keep in mind, just because you aren't performing at the same rate a liquid cooling would does not mean you aren't performing well. You can still do very good without a liquid coolant. Slap a Nightshade on here and see for yourself. I unfortunately don't have one, even though I've been farming for one, so I can't really demo that. But I use things like the White Rider and the Rogue Imp, and those aren't even frost weapons, and they still benefit from this build because of the bonus frost damage from Enrage. So honestly, use whatever you like. It will still be good with this build, even though it's not a liquid cooling, and it's not going to be liquid cooling meta type good, alright? You can still have a very good build. So that does it for the skills and the inventory. For my hero points, I chose the Village Idiot background for the increased strength and wisdom. These are also the 2 hero skills that I maxed out. I think that strength and wisdom are the most valuable because they directly increase your damage. You can spend your extra skill points on attunement so that you can get your From the Shadows ability back up quicker. But for this build, I'm not even running my extra points into attunement. I'm actually running them in Constitution, so that's unoptimized as well. That does it for the Cold Crit Frost-Shiver build. I hope you guys found this build helpful. Good luck on your loot farming. Thank you for watching the video, and as always, have a great day.